The Gilded Age, an overview. The period in American history between Reconstruction and the Progressive Era is commonly known as the Gilded Age, and that time period was approximately 1880 to 1900. But things only looked prosperous from a distance. Now, that's not to say that there was nothing prosperous about this time period, but there were plenty of things that outsiders looking in didn't see. They just saw what looked like a gilded age, lots of good things going on in the United States. During this period, the United States seemed to be simultaneously abandoning the ideals of the past and failing to anticipate the future. Now, there were some reasons for this. This was due in large part to the confusion of a horrendous civil war and massive immigration, industrialization, and urbanization. So the Civil War caused a lot of problems in the United States. The South was going to be in debt. The South was kind of torn up from all of the things that happened during the war. Different battles had destroyed buildings. People had burned the railroads, which was basically going to be melting them to where they were unusable. A lot of things in the South had to be reconstructed. So you had that Reconstruction period, and after that, people were still kind of figuring things out. On top of that, you had massive immigration. You had a lot of people coming into the United States to work and look for that American dream. You had industrialization, lots of new innovations coming about faster than people could keep up with. And urbanization, the growth of cities. So all these things happening very quickly didn't leave the United States citizens a lot of time to plan for the future or to anticipate what was coming because things were changing so quickly. During this period, many Americans sought refuge in community organizations like the Moose Lodge, the Elks Club, and the Masonic Lodge. So these different groups let people go and join together with people who had the same ideas as them, and you could kind of feel like things weren't moving so fast. These people here all understood you and had the same kind of beliefs and ideals that you had. The politicians of the Gilded Age tended to avoid the major issues of social injustice and equality, and instead they focused on minor issues like public versus parochial schools and the Blue Laws, which were laws restricting commercial activity on Sunday. So the politicians at this time period weren't going to focus on the big gap in social justice and social equality. You still had a lot of freed slaves that were not getting the social services and the rights to citizenship that they should be getting. They were not being treated as equals as they should be. So you had a lot of that going on. Politicians were going to ignore it. Instead, they would focus on public versus parochial schools and the Blue Laws, restricting commercial activity on Sunday. A lot of people that came over to America from Europe were coming because of religious persecution. So a lot of people in America were religious at this time, and a lot of them didn't want to work on Sunday. So you have these laws restricting commercial activity, but with that boom in industrialization, people wanted there to be that extra work day as a possibility. Many business leaders did not trust politicians because they did not feel that they had to fight their way to the top. So a lot of businessmen felt that they had to fight their way to the top, and that these politicians had not actually had to do that. Some of them may have actually been businessmen themselves, but some of them may have had people donate to their cause, or they may have been people running in an area where they've lived for a long time, their families lived a long time, and they've been inheriting that wealth rather than fighting their way to the top. So this led to business leaders not needing to trust the politicians, and businessmen believed that the role of government was to protect property and trade through tariffs. So this is what the businessmen wanted. They wanted their property protected, and they wanted trade protected so that they would benefit through tariffs that the government would put in place. So if the government was taxing goods that were being imported, that was going to help local United States businesses. So the businessmen just wanted government to protect property and trade. They didn't want them interfering in how their businesses were run in the United States. And many people at this time believed that wealth justified itself. So basically, if you were wealthy, you deserved it. And that God showed his favor, because remember, most of the people in the United States came from a religious background and could share this belief. They believed that God showed his favor to people by making them rich. There was a general sense that the poor were responsible for their own plight. So people weren't very sympathetic to poor people. The general idea was that wealthy people were wealthy because they deserved to be, and poor people were poor because they deserved to be poor. That God was showing his favor to people by making them rich, or if they didn't deserve to be rich, he was keeping them poor. There was that social injustice and inequality that was keeping some people down. There were different laws that were keeping poor people poor, and there wasn't a whole lot of anything in place to help people who were out of work. So while this was the general sense, it may not have been entirely accurate, leading to the idea that things looked prosperous all over from a distance, but there really were some problems during the Gilded Age in the United States.